Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. My name is Jamie. I'll be the moderator for today's session. Personally, I've recruited in product for around 8 years now. Started out in the UK, been working in the United States for the last 3 or 4 years. And I specialise in helping startups build and scale teams. We've got a really talented panel today. I'm really excited to see what comes out of this. So I'll pass you on to the team so they can make their introductions. I'll start over if you want to start, Lesley.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Lesley Mottla. I am currently Chief Product and Experience Officer at ButcherBox, which is a sustainable food company based in Boston. I've been in product management for most of my career. I've built and led products and product experiences and product teams kind of in a variety of industries, including consumer software, business software, fashion, food, transportation. And I've worked and built teams at various stages, including founding team to scaling and growth stages to IPO and acquisition and integration of an acquisition. So super excited to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lesley. Rob, do you want to make an introduction?
Sure, yeah. Here we go. Hi, everyone. I'm Rob Brown. I am the head of product right now at Kodiak Robotics, based in Mountain View, California. I've had sort of most of my career also in product management, 20-something years now as a product manager. I started out really just sort of being on the sort of like analyst development side of things and got cut my teeth helping to define systems 20 odd years ago in the UK. I was very fortunate, fast forward, to be part of a startup well known in Boston area, Kiva Systems, with developing warehouse automation. And we got acquired by Amazon, spent a bunch of time there really learning how to number one, build automation at scale, but number two, how to build a product team. And get a team that could understand how to support that. I then moved on to a small startup, Sci-Fi Works, building self-flying drones, and then moved to Autonomy in Boston on self-driving technology. Spent 4.5 years there, and now I'm at Kodiak Robotics. So pleasure to meet everyone. Looking forward to the questions.
Thank you very much, Rob. And last but not least, Anupama, do you want to make your introduction as well?
Yeah, hi, I'm Anupama Kuruvilla. I have not been a product manager for very long, like the rest of the two on the panel. So my background is a little different. I started in research. I was a research scientist working at Audi autonomous driving team. Then I moved on to work at Faraday Future, which is an EV company. I had the perception team, mainly worked on LiDAR, radar, camera fusion, and sort of moved into product management while I was in Faraday, mainly during the course of Faraday going IPO. And then I moved to Motional, which is where I work now. And I mainly... my responsibilities is mainly on AV capabilities, defining the ODD. So that's what I'm doing right now. So thank you, and looking forward to questions.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, everybody, for those introductions. Hopefully, you can see there's some great pedigree on the panel this afternoon for us to be able to answer some good questions. And my lights have just gone off in the office, which is a great start. So I'm very sorry about that. These great technical mishaps that happen. Well, in that case, let's get started with some questions then. The first question, I think, which a lot of people and product founders often wonder is, what are some of the best practices to have in place when you're about to start that first hire and bringing people into your team? So I suppose looking at it from a company perspective, that's building from scratch. How do you find these people? How do you identify the areas you need to recruit in? So I suppose I'll open that up to to either yourself, Lesley, or Rob. Whichever one would you like to take the lead on that?
Sure, Lesley. Go first, Lesley.
Sure, I'm happy to start. I think in those early stages when you're thinking about hiring a product manager or a product team, number one, usually the product manager at that point in time is like the founder or the CEO or multiple people, right? So number one is, are those people kind of ready to bring someone on to start to kind of have the conversation around how we're going to, build this product? So that's really number one. Number two would be starting to have some form of vision for where your product, is going. It doesn't need to be, super long term, but in these early stages, some sort of vision, because that'll also some sort of vision and also like what outcomes you need from the product, in the next year. Because if you kind of go through those, then you'll start to see where the gaps are and where the needs are, and you can start to define kind of the type of person or people that you're looking for, or type of organization that you want to start to build.
Excellent. No, thank you for that, Lesley. Rob, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think one of the things sort of being on the inside of building a product team from scratch, and having been a few times the only product manager at a company and trying to hire the first people, the thing I look for the most bringing people on is getting the flexibility in their backgrounds. That I'm not necessarily looking for someone that is an expert in one thing, but is really that all-rounder that can accomplish many different things. And so that sort of comes through experience, understanding what you need, what you need to be looking for. But I'm really looking for someone that is really able to kind of like throw themselves at any problem. Ideally, someone that's analytical, but also a creative thinker and problem solver. One of the things I found about product management is it isn't necessarily just about product management. There's lots of other things when you're building a team that product managers are doing to help build the team and the company. So just really looking for capable people. I'll also answer this a different way as well. I've been very fortunate to enter companies as the first product manager. And so when I'm asking individuals within the company, I'm interviewing them to really understand what they think they need in terms of product management, to make sure it's the right kind of fit, right? There's a sort of relative understanding of what product management does, but some people don't really know. Is it more to business development? Is it actually managing the product? What are they looking for in terms of the skill sets that is going to help them grow? And that answer can be very different depending on where the company is and what they want to do. So for me, that's an important thing going into a company as the first person.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point, Rob. And something I've noticed when helping companies hire before is actually some people think they need a product manager, then they bring that person in and perhaps they needed something slightly different. So I think it's very important from a candidate perspective to do their research on the company and then say, right, you're right. It's almost that two-way interview of understanding, okay, what am I going to be doing? Is this the right sort of opportunity for me and everything you've mentioned there? Because it can be a lonely place if you're the first sole product person, for sure. So no, it's interesting. Anna Pramar, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I think one of the things that I'd also like to say is it depends on what stage the company is in, right? Just like what Rob was saying. And it's also important one of the things that I've learned is it's important for the product manager to be a good listener, because sometimes it's not necessary for you to jump in and say, this is what we need to do. Because sometimes when things are in flux and things are not set, the plans are not made, it's always good to just listen and sometimes not even act on it. Just sort of be the gatherer of information and have it, because the needs evolve with time and what people think also evolves with time. So it's not necessary for you to act on every input you get, but it's important for you to sort of keep your ears open and just gather information. So it's important for you to just keep things and have that perspective, right?
Absolutely. No, brilliant. Well, thank you for that. some great input there, so I appreciate that. I suppose in terms of the hiring process, when you're starting to bring people in, how important is it to have that robust hiring strategy in place? I think an early stage startup, some of the founders are often doing the interviewing, and it can be a challenge in itself sometimes to perhaps have a great interview process in place. So I suppose this is probably aimed more at early stage founders. What would your advice be to them to make sure they've got a robust and thorough, without being too thorough, interview process in place? Anybody, Lesley, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah, I can start. I mean, I think part of it has to do what the others have already acknowledged. Like, if it is, it's a early stage company, so you really need to be looking for the type of person that's going to be, comfortable and thrive in that type of company. First of all, you have people who have worked in startups, you have people who have worked in large enterprises doing product, and then you have people who have maybe done both. So I think, you're really looking for, like Rob had said, it's like a certain profile at that stage, someone who is, more of, they're really nimble, they're really, flexible, they're analytical, they're strategic and tactical. I kind of call these people like pioneers. They love to prototype. They like, a clean slate. They like building things. And that's a certain profile of person. So versus, if you're at a different stage of company, you may be looking for, a different profile, someone who's more of a, builder or maintainer, or someone who's going to, improve something that already exists. So I think really taking the time to, acknowledge where your product is at this point, the founder needs to really acknowledge that. And then that'll help to dictate kind of that profile of person you're looking for.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so take that one step further. I think what I've found it's very important to do as part of an interview process is really define what the panel should be looking for. And I found it very useful to just write down the kinds of questions that as someone interviewing, I would want people to focus on, right? What are all of those attributes, right? As an example, Leslie's examples would be some of those attributes. There might be technical skills that they're after, and you want to make sure that the panel is going to be covering that whole suite of things that you are actually looking for, and not focusing on the things you don't care about. So you actually have a good picture of what this person needs to look like. And so if, for example, a startup is ready to hire their first product manager, or you're the first product manager and you want to expand your team, it's helpful because it's not just going to be you on the panel, or you're not even there, for you to write down what you think the scope of the role is, what kind of general experience that, how much experience the person has got, what kinds of skills they should be looking for, but also give them very targeted questions that you would think you would want to be asking of people, right? And just get that up front, and that can help the process go a lot better. Because often what I've found is in these small companies, people, even though if you're there as the first product manager, people don't understand still what product management is sometimes in a small company. So it's good to kind of just reiterate that through just prompted questions.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, can I just add to that? Because I think it's a really good point.
Yeah.
One thing that I've used is like just create a competency matrix or something, so that you can guide different interviewers to kind of rank things. You don't have to get overly prescriptive, but even having that avoids like a very arbitrary decision on who you're hiring. And it's such a critical hire that I totally agree. Like having a little bit of structure there, or some structure, is really, it's going to pay off immensely.
No, brilliant. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think you're right. I think having that structure in place and the competencies, at least you're trying to get out of the process, is so important to get right. And I think if I can add just a little tip onto that as well for anybody looking to hire at the moment, I would say, act quickly from the first stage to the final stage and that offer stage. I've seen this market at the moment is so fast paced candidates get snapped up left, right, and centre. People have multiple offers on the table. So if you can make them feel desired, make them feel wanted, and speed through that process, it will highly increase your chances of landing that person when you decide they're the right person. So on to the next question, I suppose. Then we're looking at, what would you say are some great characteristics of a product team? So let's say the company's a little bit further along and we're hiring the second, third, fourth person. How do you tend to look for the next people to bring in? I know a lot of it will based on the current talent setup and the personalities, but what would you say are the great types of people to bring in as a team grows? I'll open that up to anyone who wants to take it there. Rob?
Sure. I'll take that one first. So, I mean, as the team grows, you have more opportunity to split the responsibilities, right? And so when the team's small, you kind of have to go broad across the whole product. And over time, if you can add more people, of course, you can start to. And my preference has always been to have individuals take various sort of product areas top to bottom. And top to bottom means end to end through the technology stack of whatever you're building, so that they really understand everything from top to bottom, but they're able to own that area. And the luxury as you're adding more people is that you can then start to specialize. And going back to what I said earlier, you want all rounders to start. If you're gradually building your team and you're going to 4 to 5 people, you can start to think to specialize a bit more. However, with that said, you also you need to think that your team is small. And what if one person leaves? Can you have individuals bridge into those other roles? So still at around that kind of number, I still look personally for all-rounders that are able to bridge into other things, because in my experience, that's happened. People have left, and you need to get people to bridge into new roles, or you might want people to grow and take on more than one area of responsibility. So that's my answer.
Excellent. Thanks, Rob. Lesley?
Yeah, and I was just going to add, thinking a bit about, again, your org design. Like, I like to think about the product a little, kind of like what Rob said, as an ecosystem. So you've got, maybe you have customer components that are very like direct interactions with customers, and then you've got kind of behind the scenes or back of the house. And so really thinking, how are you going to fill the right areas, but create a team that is well connected? I think that's, a critical component of a good product team, that they're, highly collaborative and sharing information and able to work together. But basically that you're kind of building out based on whatever outcomes you're striving for in the product at that stage.
Thank you. Anna, from is there something you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I'd add to that saying the concept of being a generalist and a specialist, right? So it's important to have the mix of both. And the problem with having many specialists is it gets tunneled, right? And then people get siloed, and then you don't know, and people speak different languages. But having only generalists is the other side of the coin, where you don't have enough expertise to really support the team that you're supporting, right? To give them the right guidance and direction. So it's supposed to be a mix of both. And I think the right blend is when you have a mix of both and people are able to communicate. And when you have deliverables from the product team, it's sort of a unified voice, right? So it's not competing priorities. It's not confusing message to the other teams that you're servicing. So I would say you should have a mix of both.
Yeah, brilliant. No, well said. I think it's difficult to strike the right balance between having generalists and specialists in your team, and I'm not sure many people can get that right. It's pretty difficult to do, but there's lots of different ways to hire the right people for the right job in your team. Again, it goes back to understanding exactly where your product is and where you're trying to get to, where you are along your roadmap. No, brilliant. So I think moving on to the next question, I suppose looking at when do you know the time is right for you to start hiring on your product team? Again, this is probably aimed at more of an earlier stage organizations. I've seen both sides of the coin, where some people will be hiring products straight away. Again, as we mentioned, they are often the founder can often be the product manager, but they'll be straight away hiring 2 or 3 PMs You know, I suppose from your experience, what do you think you need to get in place before you can pull the trigger on hiring? Quite a difficult question there, so feel free if anybody would like to.
Well, being
jump in or
wants to go first. Lesley, go for it.
Yeah, again, I think that the founder or the founding team, you know, needs to be ready to have a partner, because really at that point in time, it is more of it's another partner coming into the mix, and so they, you know, need to kind of be ready for that. And I think also it's a time when you're ready to hire, also when those folks really need to be doing something else for the business. It could be out, you know, promoting it or selling it, or, you know, just other parts of the business where maybe the CEO or founder needs to spend more time versus kind of the day-to-day of product. So I guess I'd start with where the founding team is at.
Yeah, I've seen this a couple of ways. I've going to the point of, you know, the founders of a small company, they're going to spend a lot of time starting to do product management activities themselves. And one of the sort of breaking points is when they're so consumed by just managing the product and working with the engineering teams, doing that kind of role, that they really need to say, okay, now this is the time where I need someone to take this on, because it is time consuming for me. And related to that is really like, you know, what is that right time? Not just in terms of like, you know, how drowning I am as a founder of the company, but also do I have like a technology that has stuck yet, and depends on which company you're in, that, you know, I am sort of ready to bring on someone, especially if you're doing really something very complicated. You kind of need to, you know, see if you've got something that is actually going to stick before you get a product manager in there. The flip side I've seen of that is that, you know, some companies are sort of building a technology and don't really have a solution yet for it, which is always a dangerous thing. And so it is sometimes useful to bring a product manager in to help really define what that solution is, what the problem statement is of for the company, so that they really have something to gravitate to. So you're not just building a technology with no purpose. So I've seen both, and I've seen some companies sort of struggle with the latter, and some companies struggle with the former, because they know that they've already got a good application, but they're just drowning, and they just need to get a team to help them out.
When do you think the right time would be to maybe add some people into maybe bring in a product design, you know, UX research, UX designers, you know, to have them maybe share some of the workload and work alongside the product team? I know that often that is a role which can be overlooked a little bit. So when would you suggest the right time to hire in that area would be?
Should I go first again?
Come on then, Rob.
All right, I'll take this one. Yeah, so I mean, it really depends on what you're building, I think. You know, if you have a product that has an end user that is you know, conscious of how the product works for them, then that's an important thing to do. If you're just building like a product that is infrastructure related, you don't need it. But it really depends on you know, what it is you're building. And so if you've got a product that ultimately has to work well for the customer, and you've got maybe some product managers that have been plugging the gap and being designers, which I've been. In my former life, I've been product manager come designer, albeit maybe not that great. But you know, there comes a point in time where you need to make that product really sellable and workable for the customer, and that's a point in time where you're like, okay, I need to get this to the point where it either looks really good or it needs to function better, and that's a sort of starting point to think about bringing in design. And you know, there's lots of aspects to design. There's you reel them off. You know, there's user research, there's design, and there's industrial design, depending what you're doing. And what I've seen work best is to hire again, well-rounded individuals that are designers that can bridge into user research.
Yeah.
As you grow, then you could add user research as well on the front end so you don't have garbage in, garbage out. You actually, have a better front end process.
It's having that those generalists early on, isn't it? And then you can branch out to specialists as we grow. So, okay. Next question I was thinking there was, I suppose, from your perspectives, from as candidates, we'll say, looking to move positions, what makes you decide to leave one organization to the other, and what attracts you to organizations these days? Anupama, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so I think it's two things. One, where the person is in their own personal journey, right, their career journey, and if that's aligned with the place you're in, or if it's not, when that diverges, you start to look out. And you're also looking out to fulfill something that you're looking for, right? So you're missing something, and that's what you're looking for. So usually, I think your question was, what makes somebody look out? So as people who are handling teams, we want to make sure that we keep our team intact, right? So we want to make sure that the people on our team stay, and that means understanding what their personal journeys are and making sure they feel fulfillment in their current role. And sometimes it's because they don't like what they're doing now and they want to expand and do something else, right? So expand could also mean going sort of broad, like laterally, right? Looking at doing something different. Could also mean that I want to do the same thing, but I want to do more of it. So maybe then somebody wants to specialize or do more of that. That's one. And this is something that's in our control as leaders who lead product teams. But then people also move out because the product that they're working on doesn't resonate with them anymore, right? And that's a bigger problem. That's a problem for the organization itself. So it doesn't resonate with what maybe you started out thinking this is what I was joining, but maybe the company changed direction and doesn't resonate with you. And then sometimes it's hard, but you have to bite the bullet and let somebody go because they're not going to be happy where they are, right? But so, and the other thing is also, there's this famous quote which say, people don't leave company, they leave managers, right? So it's also, as product leaders, it's something that we should be conscious about, that we are tuned into what somebody else is receiving from us, because we might feel that this is my management style and this is how it works. It might not be the same for everybody, right? For example, somebody is very good at, like, it's good to have a to-do list and somebody checks these boxes off, and it works very well with somebody who's regimented, who follows lists. But there are people who don't work that way, right? They don't think of things as a to-do list. They think of things more holistically. Then the management style has to be different for somebody like that. So going back to your question, why people leave can be a big spectrum of reasons. But
yeah,
as product leaders, one thing that you can do to keep your team intact or motivated is sort of tune into people and realize that there is no one way to manage a team, because it's made of people at the end of the day, and everybody's different, right?
Absolutely. I think it's very well said. You're right. I think people do leave for both those reasons you mentioned. Rob, Lesley, anything you wanted to add on to those?
Yeah, I think I agree, with everything that Anupama said. And also what I'm hearing from people who are, interviewing with us, basically, so they're leaving someplace else. It's really, they're looking for mission-based kind of companies, or they want to be really passionate about the product. So for us, it's sustainable food. So a lot of people are passionate, autonomous vehicles. That's also like a really interesting area. So I think just really people want to resonate with the mission. And I think product teams, a lot of people in product really like to build things. They want an environment where it's an open environment. It's a transparent environment where they're not micromanaged kind of thing. So I think, people are looking for that type of environment where they can grow and actually build things. I've heard, people leaving because they're just not really building anything. They kind of get stalled out in their company. So that would be another thing. And I think people are looking for places where managers and companies kind of put, their career, their development first, and are passionate about understanding what that means to each individual, because it's different for everyone, and are very supportive in helping them kind of grow in the areas they want to grow and get exposure to new areas that they want to have exposure to.
Absolutely. Rob?
Yeah. So I have one more thing to this. I think Anna Palmer touched on it a little bit. In my past, I've been really fortunate to work at some really great places in the Boston area. Really, really, really fortunate, and have really loved working with the teams. And one of the impetuses of moving is just to work on something else. And maybe that company just doesn't have something that's really interesting for you to get into, and you've done it for a while, you've ridden the bike. And often as one of the contributing things to me leaving a company is I feel too comfortable. I'm balancing the bike too well. I get on every day, I can just do it, and then I don't have to think. And one of the pieces is like, this is getting a bit too easy for me. I need a new challenge. I want to do something else, right? And it's the reason I left Amazon, was that, even though it was a big company, was like, hey, there's self-driving technology over here. That's seeing that challenging. I work on that. And the reason I left Motional was there's self-driving Class 8 trucking over here, and Motional wasn't doing that. So I'm like, that's interesting. I'll go over there. And so it's, there's a whole spectrum, as Anna Palmer said, but that's one of definitely the contributing factors for me. If you're there for like 4 or 5 years, and you're working on something, if there isn't a really cool opportunity for you to jump into something else, you might be like, okay, maybe I just need to have an itch to scratch and go somewhere else.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, well said, Rob. And I've seen a lot of that in the market over the last couple of years, in particular, people looking to move for, and touch on what you mentioned there, Lesley, a mission-driven organisation, something that is, first of all, interesting, but doing a positive social impact as well. I've seen a lot of that at the moment. So, yeah, it's great that we're able to work in those organisations. You have that pulling power. I suppose in such a competitive marketplace, how would you differentiate, what you're doing versus your competitor? If you had a great candidate who was interviewing a few companies, what is it that you do and build the narrative of, I suppose, your organisation to help persuade them to join yourselves?
Who's gonna go first? I'll go first.
Go on, Rob.
Anyone that has interviewed with me will probably attest to this. I always over-index on context going into the interview. I'll spend like 15 minutes just explaining who we are, what is it we're building, who we are as a company, where did we come from, what is our mission, and really kind of ground that with individuals because I find interviewing is a two-way street, right? If you have someone joining the company, you want to make sure that they're invested not only in the job and the role, but they're invested in your mission and the thing that you're building, and is it going to resonate with them? And if you give them that context, number one, you might be finding right candidates, but number two, later in the interview, they might be asking more pertinent questions, and they might be able to answer your questions better. So I always prime my interview with a context thing, but really kind of just like ground it in what is it we're really doing, because as an interviewee coming into the company, sometimes you don't really know what that company's working on, right? It's not entirely clear until you get into an interview process where you sign an NDA and people can actually tell you, okay, this is what we're really doing. So I just like to do that.
Yeah, to add to what Rob was saying, another thing is also sort of giving the interviewee sort of a trajectory of what does it look like? Like what does growth here look like? How big is the team? What does the team's plan to grow, right? So I think that giving that holistic view, not just what the role is, but also like what are the things that this person will touch and how big is this going to be, right? And that sort of motivates you to sort of, because it gives you more than what is now than to like looking into the future. So I think that's also important when you're interviewing somebody.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, Lesley, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, I also just want to say that once I did take a product job without knowing what the product was. I had to sign an NDA, and the only reason I went was because of the founder. So whether that was a good idea or not, it actually turned out to be a good idea for me. I don't know that I'd recommend it for everyone, but just wanted to know that.
Roll the dice. Roll the dice. On that.
It was a total roll the dice. But I agree. I agree with the others said. I think people really want to know what the vision is of the company, of the product, and want to feel as comfortable, as you can exchange that amount of information early on. I think that's really important in those interviews.
Totally agree. And I think, from feedback I've had from candidates, from different interviews, Rob, I think the one you mentioned there, you spend a good chunk of the interview laying out, the information, the background story, the ideas we're moving forward, where we're at right now. And I think the transparency is something I know a lot of candidates really appreciate now. Some of the challenges you're facing, it's not all rosy, it's not all perfect. There are some tough times ahead, but it's about offsetting that with, why you should join the team, what's going to happen in the future, and offering, getting to know more about their career development aspirations as well, and what they want to do more of. I think the more you get to learn about them, the better it is, and the more you can talk about yourselves and where you're going, it really helps. I've had some candidates who've gone into interviews and they've phoned me afterwards and been like, I've just been grilled for 45 minutes. I did not enjoy this. That is not the type of culture we want to be a part of. But the ones where, it's a really two-way conversation, they're the ones that often go down the best, and candidates come out feeling energized, and you can hear the enthusiasm in their voices as well.
Yeah, I'm going to add one more thing to that. I definitely wholeheartedly agree with everything you said, and I think that as an interviewer, explaining to the interviewee, being honest about where the gremlins are in the company, of where your biggest challenges of maybe organizationally, okay, we struggle dealing with these kinds of groups, or we don't have a process over here, whatever it is. I think that that's really an element of trust building. Anytime you interview with a company and they're saying everything's perfect, you probably really, is it really? If you're actually explaining, okay, no kidding, this is where our challenges are, I think you're going to build a lot more trust with the interviewee, that they can eyes wide open understand what that is. And as an interviewee, those are the questions I ask going into the company. Tell me where your gremlins are. I want to know the good and the bad. Partly because I'm a bit masochistic and I like a good challenge, but I like to understand, really where the company is and what the problems are.
Well, that's it. And asking those questions, you'll get the answer, which will give you a yes or a no in your own mind if it's something you want to proceed with as well. So, no, it's interesting. Well, thanks for your input on that. Next question we're going to talk about was hybrid and remote working now is so prominent and here to stay by the looks of things. I think it's been a real challenge for some people who've only ever worked in an office environment. Some people have been working remotely for years. It's not new for them. But I suppose, what are your experiences of the hybrid and remote working environment, and how do you, I suppose, keep that team camaraderie and culture and morale quite high and strong? If I've asked that question the right way there. Lesley?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. Definitely, it was definitely I've always had, some component of hybrid, but mostly was going into an office. So it definitely was, I know it was an adjustment for me, to be kind of leading a team and actually growing a team pretty aggressively when I joined ButcherBox. So it definitely took some time to just kind of get used to and get those norms in place of communication and how often are you kind of meeting and getting together and things like that. So I guess, one thing is just accepting that it's something that you're learning as you go and you're trying different things. And I think all companies are in that mode where it's like, this is working, that's not working, and you're learning as you go. And we're finding that too, as we're hybrid, but we're meeting more in person. And so now even like in person is even more awkward. There's like problems in person now, as you get back together. But mostly just, again, it really comes back to kind of communication, but also, so making sure, I'm having one-on-ones with everyone. As a company, we do a lot of, we do all hands, we do something called an open forum, so that there are opportunities to share what's going on in the company and for other functions to share with each other, because there's less of that, there's less like hallway conversation in the hybrid environment. And then we're also doing things like on a quarterly basis, making sure that teams can come together fully in person, and have a couple days of, get together. And then same thing with company-wide. We do that a couple times a year to make sure just everyone can get together. We had like everyone in Boston this summer and, did some team building, fun stuff. So it's really just making sure that you are communicating, but purposefully having those kind of in-person, meetings as well, making them worthwhile and an opportunity for people to, get to know each other, basically.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thanks, Lesley. I appreciate that. And Anupama, Rob, anything to add from your experiences?
Go for it, Anupama.
I think it's a reality that we're all accepting now, right? So I think it's been a learning process, but I'd optimistically say that we've gotten used to it at this point, right? But one thing that I'd like to say is, mainly with interviewing, there is always a bonus of meeting somebody in person, right? I think that personal touch is gone. Right. It's always easier when you meet somebody new. It's different when you're already settled and it's a team that then one-on-ones are just an extension of what you had previously. But when it's somebody you've never met, it's a team that you've never joined. And this is something from my personal experience. I joined Motional virtually, right? And pretty much my entire team was in Boston and I worked from LA. And it was always like, it's sort of like I have to try hard to be part of the group, but not really, because I'm already part of the group, right? Officially, I am part of the group, but it feels like, oh, am I missing out because everybody else can meet in one place, right? But I think, but it's really upon the team to make sure that everybody communicates, everything is clearly shared. There should be group meetings where at least once in a week or once in 2 weeks, everybody talks in the same place, right? Getting everybody in the same room, because we kind of took those things for granted when we were in person, because you would maybe see 3 people in the hallway and say, hey, can we grab a room and just talk about this or whiteboard this? There's no more whiteboarding, right? It's really on Zoom at this point, and we have to make a conscious effort. Whereas when this was in person, a lot of effort was very natural. We didn't have to make a conscious or a slotted effort. Now, if you need 3 people in the room at the same time, you have to actually book that on the calendar. So you have to take that effort. So I think, but like I said, I think we've accepted that this is reality and we're getting used to it.
No, absolutely. That's some great points there. I think you're onboarding in a new business when all of your colleagues perhaps in one location and you feel you're outside the loop a little bit. It can feel a little bit lonely, I guess, at times. And that's a real challenge for, I suppose, for your leaders to make sure that you feel inclusive, involved, and everything there. So, Rob, what were you about to add there?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that we really noticed when the pandemic kicked off is the lack of the social interaction side of working, right? We all spend an inordinate amount of time in our lives. You look at a week of time, the 8+ hours a day that you work every day is spent with your colleagues. And I've generally tried to choose companies that have great people because I want to have fun and get to know people. and not having that social side of the interaction was tricky to start with. And I remember Emotional, when this first kicked off, we introduced lots of like water cooler topics, meetings that were like, you can't talk about work, you just turn up and chat about random stuff, so you could get to know each other. And then the other thing is like, if you can't do that, then you have individuals that are remotely working, then spend more time, put more time on their calendar so you can chit chat about their lives and, just get to know each other. That, working with each other isn't just about work, it's about, being with each other as people. So I think that's a big challenge that remote work is still going to have. We can't just say, oh, we're remote working now, it's all about work. It's not about just work, it's about getting to know each other as well.
Oh, excellent. I think very well said, Robert. Is about getting to understand a bit more about your colleagues' personal lives as well. You don't get those little moments, perhaps even on the commute in, if you see someone or even popping out on lunch together or something, so it is a different way of working these days. And I suppose that brings me on to the next question in terms of, Anupama, you touched upon, is interviewing, remotely. It's very different, as you say, when you know the people and you may be working on different sides of the country or something. But when you're doing that first interview and getting to understand the candidates and getting to understand people, do you have any tips there for how to interview remotely in terms of the culture fit, I guess, for want of a better phrase? Anupama?
I think Rob touched upon this. I think it's really giving context, as much context as possible to what the role is, what the team is, because otherwise, what does an interview usually look like? You would actually walk into the office, a HR person would greet you, right? You get time to take in the environment. This when it's happening virtually, you sort of lost out on that aspect of it, and you can sort of fill in really by giving as much context about the role, about the company, really who we are, what do we do, why are we doing this, or why should you join us, right? And why we think that you should be part of this journey. So I think we try to bridge in those gaps with as much context as possible. That's what I would say.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I suppose, moving on to the next question really is, as a startup or a company sort of starts to grow in size, are there any sort of, challenges or sort of top tips that a product lead should be aware of when scaling and building out their teams? It's a bit more of an open question for people. I notice we've got a question in the Q&A, which we'll go to in a moment as well. But any sort of top tips for things for people to be aware of as they sort of maybe first-time founders? Lesley?
Sure, I can start on that. I mean, I think, in small, a lot of companies, just prioritization and how you think about your priorities is typically a challenge. And so, but if you have a better sense of your priorities, then you're going to have a clearer direction on who you need to hire and why you need to hire them. So I guess that would be kind of my first recommendation, just kind of, where you're trying to get to, and have, 3 priorities or something like that with the product or where you're headed. And that'll really guide your, your hiring strategy.
Excellent. Rob, anything to add there?
Yeah, 100% agree with what Lesley said. And, I think that, in terms of like who that is, based upon where the company is important in terms of what are they trying to show, right? I mean, if you've been in the startup world, startups are trying to build a product, but there's also a lot of show and tell that's required towards getting there. And so, you might hire an individual that is actually really no kidding about really developing the full product, and is being really rigorous about getting there, because maybe you've got a product that actually needs to go through a bunch of stage gates to actually get to launch, versus an individual that might be more creative and a free thinker and more sort of about how to market what it is and be more demo driven. And so there's no right answer of like, oh, there's just one product manager type that you should get. So it really depends on where the company is and what they want to be doing at a certain point in time, and that's really more of a a decision that comes from the founders of the company about what they want to be doing at a given point in time. And usually you can't do both at the same time. There's a sort of decision you have to make.
Excellent, thank you. Anupam, was there anything you wanted to add to that from your perspective?
No, I agree to what they're saying. So it's really about making sure it's the right time and the right place to do things, right? And those things evolve because depending on what the size of the company is, the maturity of the product, so the needs kind of evolve. So I think being tuned to that, it's really making sure that you're bringing the right people at the right time.
Absolutely, I think it's important to be patient, isn't it, and not get too excited and try to hire too quickly for the wrong reasons. I think it's got to be right if it's going to be successful for both the new person coming in and your existing team and so on. It's important to do it at the right time. I've noticed a question in the Q&A from Jack Winston. He has asked the question, do you have any specific advice for early stage founders with no background in product management who want to be as effective as possible with limited resources and limited background knowledge? Great question there. We know how important it is to get product management right. Who would feel comfortable in taking the first answer on that one there?
Yeah, I could take a crack.
Rob.
I'm reading this the right way. I think it's important to, if you're a founder who's got no experience in this, go find a product manager to talk to. Go find someone like Lesley, right? That have done this for a long period of time, that understand what those kinds of attributes you need, and can ask you the questions about where you are and what you need, right? And help advise you, what kind of person, what kind of traits do you need in a product manager? Because there's no one size fits all solution, particularly like that sort of first hire, the first team. You've got to know really what you're after. And I think that just finding a product manager out there that maybe through a friend you could get to them or something, to just help advise you on where to go first, and just get a bit of time from someone. Usually people are quite helpful in this regard, quite happy to advise you on what to do.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say the exact same thing, and also, it could be just having coffee, or with various like more seasoned or product people, because you'll learn a lot. But I agree, try to find an advisor. I do that a lot, and I meet with people. It's like once a month we chat, or they send me over questions, when we chat, and I think that's probably the most direct way to kind of get product knowledge that's applicable to your particular situation.
So go and seek someone out who's an expert in the field and perhaps is involved in a similar type of company to yourself, the one you're in, and just say, can I buy you a coffee and have a chat about it, and teach me everything.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's basically ask your board members, ask your friends in that you trust, of like, do you know any product managers? You're a successful company. Do you know anyone that I could talk to? Just ask around, and you will find someone, and through that connection, they'll say, "Oh, I know such and such, and we want to chat with you. We'd just love to talk." And that's it. Just ask.
The worst anyone can say is no, isn't it? So I think there's nothing to lose in that sense. Anupam, was there anything you thought about there, adding on to that question from Jack?
I think forums like this, right? These are also places to seek out help, because this it's sort of you get to reach more number of people when you're part of like meetup groups and things like this, because you get to sort of sample a lot of experiences at the same time, right? So I would say also reach out to groups. Maybe if it's difficult for you to reach out to an individual, or you don't feel comfortable sort of having a one-on-one interaction, then open forums like this are definitely the place to go.
Absolutely, well said. I think, yeah, Startup Boston, the team do a great job in setting this up all year round, and particularly this week. So there's a lot of resources like that you can join in and listen to some great experts in the field. I suppose one thing Jack mentioned there, limited resources and background knowledge. When Jack's looking maybe to bring in someone in the product function, would you recommend they maybe go for a contractor to try and hire to start off with? Or would you say sort of maybe try and be patient and go for a full-time hire? Again, I'll open that to anyone. Rob looks like he's itching to answer.
So I have in my past not really had great success with like contracting for product management. I think that product management is something that the person really needs to understand what the problem is that you're working on in good detail, and what the technology is that you're building for a tech startup, that you have a good understanding, appreciation of both. That's really what product management is you understand both things so that you can build the product, can build the right thing. And I don't think that contracting is a good way to achieve that. You generally have to have a bit of runway for people to really understand the problems in the technology. Now, that's not the case for every role. You could have, for example, maybe you have more of a siloed area that you could hire a particular type of person for, right? For example, maybe in a product team, it's not just about product managers, it's about maybe designers, right? Maybe you could have a designer that is on contract because there isn't a lot of ramp for them to really understand the problem, but they can kind of get started, and you can do a 6 to 12 month contract.
Yeah, well said. I think, it's spot on. Product is so ingrained into the longer term vision of the company. You look better off having someone full time. You can always offer equity packages, stock options and that sort of thing. If perhaps a salary level you can't reach is what they're looking for, selling the dream and the company will grow and it will work out well. Well, I think that brings us right on time, pretty much. We've got about 50 seconds left. Just want to say a massive thank you to everybody for tuning in. Lesley, Rob, Anupama, thank you for joining us today, and it was fantastic listening to your perspectives as well.